el nombre del Padre, del Hijo y del Espíritu Santo. Amén. Ave María Purísima, sin pecado concebida. Espíritu Santo, fuente de toda luz, ilumínanos. Oh Señor Dios de los ejércitos, restáuranos. Haz resplandecer tu rostro sobre nosotros y seremos salvos. Muy queridos hermanos, muy buenas tardes. En vista de que hay muchos nuevos suscriptores y que quizás no sepan desde cuándo comenzó esta revolución, voy a tomarme la libertad de poner algunos videos de un canal católico que data de muchos años, What Catholics Believe. Espero que no se me enoje el padre Jenkins, pero es con el fin educativo, para que vean cómo desde ese entonces, 1980, 1990, ya se hablaba de este nuevo orden mundial, de la Pachamama en forma de la Madre Tierra, y de cómo todo esto no es a partir de Bergoglio, es a partir de Roncalli y la Pachemin Terris. Si ustedes se molestan en leer la encíclica Veritas in Caritatis o Caritate de Benedicto XVI en el numeral 67, les cita, entre otros muchos numerales, porque esta y las otras encíclicas de los papas conciliares son citadas constantemente para llevarnos en pleno y con los ojos cerrados al nuevo orden mundial, mencionándolo como la era del amor.
Order, the New World Order. We hear about it all the time. An era marked by the rule of law, longed for by 100 generations, as President Bush said. The recent war in Iraq was fought for the stability of the New World Order.
Americans are wondering, what does New World Order mean? The phrase New World Order has been around for decades. This book was written in 1920, calling for international controls. It was Nelson Rockefeller's goal in 1968. Fidel Castro demanded it at the United Nations in 1979. Mikhail Gorbachev urged it at Stanford University in 1990. And now, look who's calling for it.
When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this New World Order.
The New World Order, is it something we should eagerly anticipate, or is it something we should dread? Will it usher in an era of peace and understanding, or will it transform the world into a place where the living will envy the dead? What has been the role of Vatican II and the post-conciliar church in the development of the New World Order? What has been John Paul II's involvement? And what about the recent events in the Soviet Union? Should we be rejoicing, or are they grim harbingers of the appearance of a charismatic leader who will promote the idea of a paradise on earth, the Antichrist? I'm Julius Smetona. This is What Catholics Believe. With me today to discuss the New World Order are Don Julius, a parishioner at St. Teresa of the Child Jesus Church in Parma, Ohio, and a Soviet watchdog by profession. Father William Jenkins, pastor of St. Teresa of the Child Jesus Church in Parma, Ohio, and Father Clarence Kelly, spiritual director of St. Joseph's Novitiate in Round Top, New York, a congregation of traditional Catholic sisters. Don, perhaps I can begin with you. We hear about New World Order all the time, but it's almost to the level of a platitude. What is it? No one ever tells us what it is.
In the secular arena, Julius, the New World Order means one world government under socialism. And I think the way to further define that is the president on January 24th, matter of fact, very shortly after the blurb we saw on the television there, made the statement, what was and is at stake is the promise of a new world order based upon the rule of law. And the rule of law is a key phrase there also, because as we traditionally perceive the rule of law under Christian civilization, and as America was set up, our rights were given to us by God, and the proper function of government and law was to protect those rights. When the president uses that terminology, rule of law, in association with the New World Order, God is kicked completely out of the picture. Our rights, instead of being given to us by God, then become privileges granted by the state, to be withdrawn whenever the state thinks it's appropriate to withdraw them.
Father Kelly, from your perspective, what is this New World Order?
I think the New World Order is the longed for, sought after, and most desired state which the secret societies of Europe proposed, excuse me, proposed as the opposite choice of the Catholic Church. The Church of Christ, the Catholic Church, is universal. It is for all men, for all times. It is the means of salvation. And the New World Order, or what is sometimes referred to as the Universal Republic of the World, is the opposite of that. It's a secular substitute for the kingdom of God on earth. And any group that would propose an order other than the order established by God and by his incarnate Son proposes a pagan order. And as St. Paul said, the god of the pagans are demons. So what I think it portends is what Don said, a universal socialist regime where the state has supreme authority over all the governments of the world, which will be subordinate to this universal government, and this universal government will have the military and police power to impose upon every state of the world its decisions. And that is the key, I believe, to understanding President Bush's references to the war in Iraq. He said the purpose of this war is to help bring about this new world order. Well, how would our going to war against the despot in Iraq help to bring about a new world order? It helps to bring about a new world order because it sets a precedent for the United Nations, which will be the government of this new world order. Now the United Nations, by this precedent, has a right to step in and say, in a given case, we do not like what's going on in this country or this country, and we're going to pass a resolution to condemn it. And if you do not conform to this particular resolution, we will use police power and military power to impose the rule of law established by the government of the world. Now, I think we may be a few years away from that, but I believe that is exactly what President Bush had in mind, that the United Nations now has set a precedent for using military power to impose its decision upon a particular government. Now, everybody was in favor of it because Saddam Hussein is a monster, right? I mean, he's painted that way. Everybody's in favor of it. Of course, they always do that. You know, in other words, if you want to set a precedent, you don't set up like the most virtuous person that you can imagine and then impose by police power your will on him. You pick someone like Saddam Hussein, who is no better or no worse than, you know, most socialist dictators throughout the world. I mean, the conditions of repression in Saudi Arabia were far greater than in Iraq. In Iraq, for example, Jews were permitted to practice their faith. Catholics, for the first time in a very long time, were permitted to practice their faith. I mean, I'm no advocate of Saddam Hussein. I'm just saying that they use people like him and paint him in a certain way in order to lend a justification to their action. But that's what I believe. It is a one-world, socialist, anti-Christ state. That's the essential ingredient. An anti-Christ state, which they hope to and have longed for and have worked for at least over the last 2 centuries, the secret societies and the Masons, the Freemasons.
Father Jenkins, you recently gave a talk on John Paul II and the Vatican and the New World Order. I believe it's relatively unknown that one of the organizations and institutions which has long been, or within the last 25 years, promoting this New World Order has been the Post-Conciliar Church.
Julius, that's true. And that videotaped segment that we saw a few moments ago showed Rockefeller's involvement, Castro's involvement, Mikhail Gorbachev's call for a New World Order. It didn't mention a number of other calls by presidents of nations recently for a New World Order. But what is not generally known is that the Second Vatican Council called for a New World Order, called for a one-world government with the police powers necessary to enforce its will over the world. In fact, I can read you some quotations from the last document approved at Vatican II. It's the document called Gaudium et Spes. It's a dogmatic constitution, so-called, on the church in the modern world. And that was finally approved on December 7th, 1965. And I'll just read you some of the statements made by Vatican II in that document. The fathers at the council said, "We must place before our eyes the unification of the world and the duty imposed on us to build up a better world in truth and justice. We are witnessing then the birth of a new humanism."